We were having to evacuate where we lived because we got the news that the Japanese were 2 hours away. So we piled aboard what vehicles we had. There were 3 of them. My father and his police department were in the first bus with the important papers. My mother and aunt and all the young children were in the second vehicle. And 3 of us teenagers and some of the servants were in the third vehicle. We were evacuating. We came to the Sitang River Bridge, which we had to cross to reach the other side of Burma. And American planes, the American AVG, they called them the Flying Tigers, came along and casually bombed and blew up the bridge with us on the wrong side of it, because we on the last vehicle had a flat tire and were trying to change the wheel. My parents, the administration, everyone was there on the other side, and from what they knew, we had all been killed. They stayed for about 3 or 4 days, and they were moved on by the military because they reckoned that they were providing a target for the Japanese. The Americans had long gone. They were just having fun. And we 3 children and a few servants were left on the wrong side of the river, and we were looking for a way to cross. While we were doing this, we could hear a Japanese detachment coming along, so we sort of scattered and hid along the riverbank, and the Japanese set up camp, and there was no other way to cross the river, so we stayed fairly close, knowing that they'd go sooner or later. In the meantime, what was left of the Coilies regiment came along and was slaughtered by the Japanese, who they didn't know they were there. We saw the bodies floating down the river and the entrails being tossed into the trees by the Japanese, who split them up the middle. And the vultures came and, were feasting on all this. But there was no way to cross the main river, so we just started walking north. And we walked in the end for 6 months or so, I'm not quite sure, because we had no diaries or calendars or anything. We just walked. We lived off the country. The Burmese servants eventually had to go back to their own families and their own way of life. And in the end, there were just 2 of us left. We lived in the jungle. We stole what we could from the fields or from the jungle growth to eat. And we eventually got to where they were building the Burma Road. We were picked up by some sappers and sent on to the military at Imphal, crossed the border into Assam, where we were looked after by some tea planters. And eventually, with signals flying back and forth, they found my father, who was working for the government, and I was reunited with my family. Simple story.